The king had just died. The men wouldn't go off to war for another 4 years. The city would not win a Stanley Cup for another 8 years. The Queen City, as it was known at the time, was just becoming a metropolis. Today we're looking at the real history behind Murdoch Mysteries, Season 16, Episode 9, 10, and 11. Episode 9, Honeymoon in Hampshire. Crabtree and Effie have headed over to Europe on their honeymoon. They stay at a beautiful hotel in Hampshire, right over here, in the Hampshire County, southwest of London. Let's quickly take a look at some hotels in the area from the same era, in beautiful old postcards, which I love.
Postcard from Effie and George.
Oh, where are they now?
They've left Paris and they're due to arrive in Hampshire today.
Julia Ogden receives a postcard from the Lovebirds, sent from France, aka this, an 1889 photo of Paris, and this stamp. When Crabtree and Effie secretly meet King George, he mentions his troubled son, Edward, and that he's in Portsmouth. Well, here's footage of Edward a few years later in Portsmouth, heading to India in 1921, years before his brief reign as king.
About to use it to unknowingly assassinate the king. You know, I wasn't sure what to do with you two at first. And then the perfect narrative presented itself. An epic fight over the Sunrise Suite.
That'll never work.
Now this scene right here, I had to stop because it kind of looks like it's filmed exactly in this room. And, you know, the actor is even wearing a jacket like mine. So, I feel like they might have taken some inspiration from me. Episode 10, Dashed to Death. A good portion of the episode takes place at Varsity Stadium, which is still there today, right here, on the University of Toronto grounds. The grounds had been used by the school for athletics since 1898. The stadium, as a stadium, wouldn't actually open until 1911, a year after the episode takes place. The episode, which takes place in 1910, tackles the fact that Canadian women weren't allowed to go to the Olympics yet. It's true, and they wouldn't until the 1928 Amsterdam Olympics. Here are some photos of Canadian women departing for the 1928 Olympics. But women actually had been very involved in athletics around Toronto for ages. Here are some photos of women competing in Toronto around 1910. Many of the photos are actually from Varsity Stadium. Canadian sprinter and Olympic medalist Andre de Grasse is in this episode in a cameo. Now I have to say, I also was a runner for a long time, and, well, my episode aired before him, so at least I got that.
If you're that fast, you should test your mettle in the track and field meet today.
Oh yes, you could compete in the 100 or 200 meter dash. I imagine you would do very well.
How fast are those boys running?
Some of the men are running the 100 meters in under 11 seconds.
11 seconds.
11 seconds? Come on.
You think you could run it faster than that?
When those boys break 10 seconds, give me a call. I'll give them the race of their life.
De Grasse is the fastest person in the world, and very high profile in pop culture. But that's nothing new for Canadian runners. And, yes, not always for good reasons. But in 1910, the world's most famous athlete, arguably, was a runner from Toronto, Tom Longboat, the Onondaga long-distance runner from the Six Nations Reserve near Brantford, Ontario, who lived in Toronto at the time and trained right here, the West End YMCA, now called the Great Hall. Well, actually, the lower theater is named Longboat Hall. And, fun fact, that same room arguably had the very first games of basketball ever played. Well, a version of it at least. James Naismith taught there in the early 1890s before heading to Massachusetts. Longboat dominated the Boston Marathon in 1907, breaking the record by over 5 minutes. Marathon running at the time arguably being the most high-profile and famous sport in the world. Episode 11, DOA. The episode has a classic noir mystique dramatic camera angles, dramatic music, and stark imagery akin to old Hollywood hits of yore. It's also one of my favorite episodes, so let's take a look at it in black and white. The beautiful episode touches upon a few themes. Has Murdoch been poisoned? Is it a mental health issue? Dark sorcery? Well, let's take a look. If Murdoch's seeming breakdown had, in fact, been a mental health issue, it would have led him here. What was named the Hospital for the Insane at the time, at Queen Street West in Ossington. The building, with a difficult past, had been named the Asylum for the Insane until just 3 years prior. Conditions would have been very poor at the time, and by today's standards, unacceptable. If it had been evil spirits, well, the city had hundreds of churches at the time, many of them right around the neighborhood where Murdoch Mysteries takes place. But poison? The episode includes a chemist who owned an apothecary or pharmacy, but Toronto at the time had quite a few, as you can see in the city directory.
You all right?
Perhaps a bit jittery.
Was your husband a drinking man?
My husband was teetotal. Believed drink to be the devil's brew.
Mr. Bent wasn't drunk because he was a teetotal or teetotaler, someone who abstained from alcohol, which was a large part of the population at the time. The province, city, and regions within the city having prohibition during numerous stages at the end of the 19th and early part of the 20th century. In fact, in parts of Toronto, prohibition lasted until, well, in the Junction, the year 2000. Yup. Here are some prohibition posters in Ontario at the time, including this one, an interesting tactic. Camels and lions drink water. You should too. There it is. Convince me. Both Murdoch and Julia Ogden head to the Don jail to see Frank Rhodes. As they walk through the prison, you can see jail cells and creepy hands. But the real cells at the Don jail, like this one, wait, sorry. But these and these were far less spacious. And in fact, the Don jail and other prisons in Toronto at the time, like Toronto Central Prison, here were notoriously macabre. Now, for all you Murdoch lovers out there, please do not be scared away from the city. That was 100 years ago. And to be honest, there weren't actually that many murders. Thank gosh. So, make sure to come visit. The city's full of really cool history. Now let me briefly digress. If you're interested in Toronto history, please make sure to like this video, share it, comment on it, subscribe to it, and as always, tell all your friends.